I love making music videos. I've definitely done my share of them, and I want to give you guys a great overview of what you need to do in order to have a successful professional production shoot, even if you're working on a budget and even if you're working as a single person. Because 99% of what I've accomplished with my music videos I've done as a single person production company.
In a world where nuclear war has begun, vampires fought back in super real 3D.
When you're making a music video, there's usually two different options that you have. You can either do a performance-only music video, and you can charge less for that because they are less complicated, or you can do a music video that has that plus storyboard shots. Whether it's a band or a single artist, the best way to start moving forward on a potential music video is to meet them in person. I like to record the meeting with my iPhone just as an audio recording. And I do this with all types of clients, even outside of music video clients. And that way I can not worry about taking notes. We can explore things out loud where I can just stay engaged with the conversation and not be pulling myself away to try and remember certain notes. This is even before you've potentially landed the gig, because this is gonna land you the gig as long as you're excited about the project, you have passion about it, and you already know ahead of time that if they choose to move forward, that they have a budget to do it, that you've discussed ahead of time. When you're doing a music video that has both band performance shots and storyboard shots, it's gonna be a 2-day shoot. You can do more days than that, that's great if there's a budget for it. But most of the videos that I've done that you'll see throughout my website, those were done in 2 days if they have storyboard shots. And 1 day is totally dedicated to the band, and 1 day is totally dedicated to storyboard shots. Both have their place as far as attention, detail, planning, things that you need to get together. So now when you do meet up with a group and you guys start discussing all the options of the music video, what I really like to do is just tell them this: let's think big. Let's go ahead and just get everything out on the table. Let's not be judgmental about anything that we throw out there. Let's just think out loud. Let's think really big. And then what happens is you guys start getting these grand ideas. You know, you start referencing other music videos that have budgets that you can't imagine having, right? You get that all out on the table, you get an idea of the looks that you're talking about, the styles, and the environments. And then from there, you can start consolidating what might be realistic to do and what you guys actually have access to based on your location, based on the budget, based on the people you know, based on the props you might have. But you're gonna put some of that weight on the band or the group to pull those things together. These are connections usually that they have, that they're saying they can get a hold of. So you're gonna try and hold them to that so you guys all have a successful video. And you act excited. I mean, let them know that you're excited, that if they can get those items, if they can get that location, you would be all over filming that. We could do so many things with that. Get them hyped up to pursue doing that. This is one of your first music videos. You don't know how long it's gonna take to do each thing, but the biggest tip I can throw at you is that if you light things, it's gonna look better. If it's anything inside, you wanna try to light it yourself with something, it's gonna take more time to do that. So I really recommend pushing the client in the direction of quality over quantity. Get less shots, do less environments, but do those environments and those shots right, because a wide variety of shots that just look amateur, nobody's benefiting from that. So if you deck out a single location and you figure out all the different angles that you can get in it that feel like different environments, you're gonna get way more out of that. The production quality is gonna stay consistent. You might find that you get to enjoy the actual filming process all the more because you're not worried about trying to wrap this up and getting over to this other location, packing up all your gear, and well, I can't break that out because I won't have time to put it back. So dedicate yourself to 1 or 2 locations for the day. And if it's the storyboard stuff, you're really gonna have to be realistic with them about how many characters you can actually include in that. If you're trying to develop any kind of actual story per character, you really can only do a few. You're really only going to be able to get to a handful of locations. If you need to do a lot of locations, try and keep them more outside. And I know that makes you dependent on the weather, but that's just more realistic to pull off because you don't have to light it in general. I mean, you're going to get away without lighting it as much. Golden hour, that's the best time of day. Save up your glory shots for that. If you're planning to get the performer or like some culmination experience of the character reaching some epiphany point and stuff, and you need those shots to look the best, try and save that for the golden hour, which is just the last hour or 2 of the day. That's gonna be your best time. Mornings can look great, but you lose the light in reverse and it just gets more and more intense. And the other thing is that in general, when you start filming, especially if it's the performer, you're gonna have puffy puffy eyes. They're still gonna be a little bit sleepy. The energy level's not gonna be there. That is a real thing. Those takes are the worst. They look the worst in them. So if you do have to do that, man, stay wide. Don't do any close-up shots. Stick to your wide lensing. Stay further back. Don't get right up on their face right in the morning because they're not gonna look their best. So when you are back and you're listening to the meeting and you're trying to go ahead and draw out a storyboard, what? Storyboard, yes, a storyboard. If you actually map out everything in a storyboard, you give yourself the now ability that on the shoot day, when you're trying to focus on your filming, your directing, again, if you're doing this as a single person, your lighting, the props, the continuity, everything. You know, I've had storyboards where there's like close to 50 shots, 50 physical shots that I know that we want to get, and that's gonna make you more efficient to get each shot, but on top of that, it gives you the ability to start breaking things apart and see every shot that you need to have happen in this single location. So you might have a location, and that location in your edit it's gonna happen all throughout your video, but to remember all that while you're filming it and know every single shot that you wanna get that's gonna match up later in the video, it's very challenging if you're trying to do anything that has much complexity to it at all. If you have your storyboard, you just start checking that stuff off. It's great. You can just go, all right, there, we need this. Okay, great. In fact, I take the storyboard and then I make a secondary list, and that secondary list lists each room or each location, and it lists shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, shot 24, shot 28, shot 32, you know, whatever it is. And so I know all the shots, and I can just refer to my storyboard, see what shot I need to set up and do it, and take advantage of being in that single location. Because I am telling you, you go into these shoots and you think that you're gonna shoot in a certain order, and it does not always work out that way. Especially when you got actors coming late, or the weather ended up being bad, so now we need to film the inside thing first. It'll flip your whole script around. So you need to be able to ping pong through that. You can draw it by hand. There's a really easy program though that I like using called Storyboarder, and it's free. I've definitely done videos in the past where I didn't do that, and once I started doing this, I never looked back. It's gonna make you a better storyteller, I promise. Even if you can't draw, just do stick figures. It makes the biggest difference. My general rule of thumb when it comes to a full band is, you either want all of them to be wearing something completely different from one another, because that in itself is a cohesive statement, or you want them to all wear something of some same thematic value. So it's like all darker colors and we're gonna go a little bit more dressed up, or we're all gonna go a bit grungier. You wanna have some theme in there. I do feel like if there's an exception to the rule, it falls mostly on the singer. You could have the singer wearing something that's of a different color, maybe the rest of the band in different colors. Now, this is just my opinion. Here's the worst case scenario, and I've had this happen and had to make them change, because you can't have two guys that are matched up perfectly thematically and then these other two guys that are completely, you know, in different clothes. It doesn't feel cohesive. It doesn't tie everything together. And you do want to try and plan out the wardrobe a bit based on their style, obviously, but also the environment. You know, think about the colors and what's going to cut through in that environment. Or if you don't want them to cut through and you're going to try and go for more of a silhouette thing, you're absolutely going to want them to wear darker colors. So you got to keep those things in mind. You can do this in whatever order, but let's start with band performance shots, right? Or single artist performance shots. If it's just a single rapper or a single pop singer, get 20 to 25 takes of that person performing the song or that group performing the song. If it's a single artist, like a singer, you want to go ahead and place them in as many different environments as you can reach in that day to change up the location, because it's going to get monotonous fast if you only have one artist and they're just constantly singing in the same environment. Make sure to change up angles, try to get to as many locations as you can. If you're lighting it, that takes time, and I really recommend that you try to make those other locations all within walking distance of that location. You know, only bounce to maybe a couple of locations over the course of the day. If you're not lighting it and you're just filming outside, then you can bounce around more. You can get to more locations. I think that the best way to approach starting to film is start with your wide shots first. That way you see the full environment, you get to see the band or the artist perform all the way through the song. You get a feel of how they're gonna move, how much distance things are. You get to start seeing in the frame the whole wide shot what all is going to look bad, what's out of place, what's distracting. Don't start off close in unless you're planning to have no wide shots. But if you start off with the wide shot, you get to assess the entire environment from the get-go. And then that way, when you start moving in with your closer shots with longer lensing, it's just that much easier. You're just going to slide lights a little bit closer in and then just light this person if that's who the focus is. Change the lighting schemes as you move the camera in and out. Don't feel like because you set up a wide shot and you came up with this lighting scheme that you got to keep it that way. As far as choosing what lensing to do, if you're working with only a couple of lenses, then it is what it is. But I will say this, in general, I would gravitate towards more long zoomed in shots. Use longer lenses. And the reason is that you got to keep in mind, everybody's filming with an iPhone, everybody's filming with a GoPro, and those are wide angle lenses. So people are very used to wide angles. When you put on a longer lens, it's going to compress the image in a way that they can't attain with their phones or their GoPros. So you're immediately going to set yourself apart with your video as being a higher production look. So I would gravitate towards longer lensing in general for the majority of your shots. I do recommend that in general on the wide lenses to try and use those as your opportunity to do your Steadicam work. You could use something like a Ronin M or a Ronin S, depending on your camera system, or if you have a very large system, use a larger Ronin, or a Mobi if you have the budget for that. That's great. So you want to get about 10, maybe 12 takes of the full band. Then I like to get roughly 2 to 4 performance shots from each individual member. I always get usually 5 to 6 with the singer because they are the front man or front woman, and you do want to get some extra takes with them in particular. Also, don't feel like you have to keep everybody in that same single location. You know, you can take somebody and pull them into a hallway. You can take somebody and throw them behind the building or something. It's kind of fun to change up those locations, and you can do it relatively quick when it's just a single person that you're moving for those individual takes. You do need to have the singer singing to the song, right? You need to have the band performing to the song. A singer is much easier because you can get away with a smaller system that they can sing along to. In some cases, I've even had them sing along to a phone, which isn't ideal because I prefer for them to actually belt the vocals out. I find them keeping their voices lower to try and keep it at the point with the phone. But you could use something like an ion rock blocker or something like that, $100, $150. Or you could get a Bose, a little portable Bluetooth Bose. I mean, obviously there's a lot of options if it's just a single singer. But when it's a full band, the drummer is really going to dictate the volume that needs to be heard because the drummer could be the only one hearing the song, and if everyone's playing along with him, you guys are going to be in time as long as he is playing to the song. If you have a single PA speaker, it mainly needs to be dedicated at the drummer. If you need to run power to your PA, then you got to think about that in the environment that you choose. It's very cool to go ahead and say, yeah, let's go to this dilapidated, broken down structure, but there's no electricity. So you got to bring out generators and stuff. And you got to think also what's going to power the lights. When you get into an environment that you're going to be filming the music video in, I see so many shots in amateur music videos where they're just revealing too much about the environment. They might create some cool vibe, but it only works in this one spot, and they're using too wide of a lens, or they're trying to get these cool under angles and this and that, and it's revealing how crappy the ceiling is, you know, that you're actually just in a small office or something like that, and before you felt like you didn't know where you were. So be really mindful about all the objects, and again, you can start assessing that early. You start off with wide shots and then just keep working your way in with longer and longer lenses and getting closer so you get this really dramatic experience to happen. You do want to try and think outside the box and come up with neat angles. You don't always have to film the people straight on. You can get behind stuff. There's one video in particular with Cross to Bear. I mean, a lot of it was filmed like under stuff and kind of behind things. I had a lot of objects in the foreground. Just be creative. Think of angles that aren't just your typical standing at shoulder level, eye to eye, because that's going to get boring fast. Now, a lot of people like to go low, and I love going low, but you got to be mindful of something. These performers, all of them, they want to look cool. They want to look good. And if any of the performers are overweight, you've really got to keep that in mind. And undershots are really revealing on double chins. If you get complete side profiles, if it's somebody that also has a double chin, that can be really revealing too. In general, if you're trying to work with a performer that's a little bit overweight, I recommend getting the lens just a little bit higher than their eye line. You don't always have to have the singer or the performers even playing directly to the camera. I oftentimes prefer them to be playing off camera, so it just feels like they're getting off on their own music. Also, be sensitive to the lens that you use in particular on the singer, because lenses really add a lot of shape and character to a face, and sometimes it can add the wrong type of character. It can make maybe a woman look too masculine, it can make a guy look too chubby. Experiment with the lensings and figure out which one makes them look the most handsome, because that's the lens that you want to use for your close-up shots with their face. Really think about that. And if you're just using a zoom lens, explore those zoom ranges, because all of it affects how it's going to shape the person's face. For slow-mo, you can't film them in straight 60p and then all of a sudden put it in slow-mo and then it's going to match up with the music. It doesn't work like that. So the trick to making it look like it is slow-mo, but it does match up with all the instrumentation and all the lyrical lip content, if you want to go ahead and film it at your high frame rate, but they have to perform to a song that is at twice the speed, double time. It's got to be exactly twice the speed. So you can take their song before you guys are going to go out to film. You can drop it into your editor and export, put it at 200% speed, and you're going to have a copy that's exactly twice the speed, and then have that on you so you can do some takes like that too, and that band or performer has to be able to execute performing that at twice the speed. Not always an option depending on the speed of the song. If it's already a fast song, they're not going to be able to do it. But that look does look really cool. It can be just the right look for certain types of videos. When you're asking the performer to perform it at twice the speed like that, the reality is that they're not going to settle into it the same way that they would as if they were performing it at the regular speed that they perform the song. So you might lose a little bit of that comfort, a little bit of that groove, a little bit of that head bob, whatever it is, that's their character, the way that they would normally invoke physical body motion into their performance. You're going to lose some of that because they just can't physically do it at twice the speed. But it still really works, and in particular, I'd recommend trying to use that for a singer. You know, you could do that on just the singer for some of their straight shots, because the singer, I think, overall has the easiest time of trying to match that. Unless they're rapping. Again, you know, if it's really fast lyrical content, they're not going to be able to do it still. So let's overview what we've talked about. When you're shooting, it's usually one of two styles. You're either going to shoot just a performance-based video or a performance-based video plus some storyboard. If you're doing just performance, that can be done in a single day. If you're doing storyboard plus a band performance, that's usually a 2-day shoot. Think big. Help them feel like you're invested and excited about exploring the concept. And once you've explored all the huge topics, you can bring it and consolidate it back down into something that's realistic based on your location, what you guys have access to, that can kind of emulate and encapsulate that same general concept of the grand idea that maybe you threw out there. You don't have to walk away with a perfect idea yet. You can figure that out later, because if you recorded the meeting, you can listen back to it and take notes then. That way, during the meeting, you can stay totally engaged. And the biggest pre-production last tip that we went over is storyboarding. I really recommend trying to learn how to do storyboarding. You can use the app Storyboarder. It is free. If you have a Wacom tablet, it's all the easier, but you can do it with the mouse. Just draw stick figures, figure out your compositions, go in with a shot list. It's gonna help you on your shoot day so you can bounce around and figure out per room or per location every shot you need to get. I like to make a secondary list based off of the storyboard that lists just the room and location and every shot that needs to happen in there. 30, shot 24, shot 48, shot, you know, and it's all in that one room, and I can fire them all off. For the actual band performance stuff, or you know, even a single artist, I highly recommend getting 20 to 25 takes. That's what I like to come back with. That usually covers it for me. If it's a full band, the first 10 to 12, those takes are just the band, and then I like to hone in and get multiple takes of each individual member. I personally like to start off with wide lensing so I can assess the environment, and then gradually work my way in take by take with closer and tighter lensing. And don't be afraid, in fact, it's mandatory. Move the lights around a little bit as you get into the closer shots, so the shots are going to look better. Just make the best, coolest shot that you can. Feel free to take the individual members and put them in different locations than just that one general band setup. That can work too. And when it's a single person that you're now filming, it's much easier and quicker to just move that one person and one light and get over to somewhere else. Try to avoid items in the location that make it too revealing as to the location not being what you're trying to paint the picture of it being. So if it feels very surreal and cool, you don't want to show all of a sudden an exit sign or an outlet or, you know, a ceiling tile that's in an office. You know, that just pulls you out of it completely. completely. And as far as PA requirements, that's really important. You got to make sure that the artist can hear the music so they can perform to it. I recommend something like an ion rock blocker. That gets loud enough for me. You could use some kind of Bose thing, but if it's a full band, you got to make sure that whatever system you're using is loud enough for the drummer to hear it and perform through it. The rest of the band can cue off the drummer if need be. There are so many things that I just mentioned that took me so long to figure out that I hope gives you a huge jump start on how to organize your shoot and things to look out for a successful shoot. You know, you can really repeat back to the client a lot of the information that I've just given you, and I promise the client is always all ears and their eyes are wide open when I start giving off all this information. It shows that I've been around the block and that I've done this before and that I'm gonna walk them through this experience. And so even if it's your first time or you've only done this a few times, having this arsenal of information that you can just kick out at them, it really makes them understand that you're on point. If you want to follow more stuff like this and actually go out with me on shoots as it's going to start happening, I'm going to take you with me out there, give you a huge head start on stuff that I've had to figure out by myself over the last 16 years of doing this. Awesome if you could hit a like, if you could hit a subscribe button and hit that notification bell so that way you know when another episode's coming out.
Movie Voice.